How did one of the world's most remote and least populated territories become the unexpected focal point of global power? Greenland now hosts advanced U.S. space radar, controls rare earth deposits that both Washington and Beijing covet, and sits along new Arctic trade routes that could shorten global shipping by thousands of kilometers. If you want to understand how hidden megaprojects and infrastructure decisions here are quietly redrawing the map of world influence, long before the headlines catch on, consider subscribing. The real story begins with a single decisive move during the Cold War. In the early 1950s, the United States looked north, seeking a place for a new kind of military outpost, one that could watch the skies for threats coming over the pole. That search set the stage for a project that would reshape lives and landscapes, and for reasons that are still relevant to global strategy today. Construction began in 1951 on Greenland's northwest coast, where tundra meets the Arctic Ocean. Engineers, heavy machinery, and a vision of global defense arrived in a region that had until then belonged to the Inuit. For generations, families in Dundas and Pituffik hunted seals and polar bears, their lives shaped by the rhythms of sea ice and migration. In 1953, everything changed. Under orders from Danish authorities, 127 Inuit, 22 families, were told to leave their homes. The relocation took place over several weeks. Belongings were loaded onto ships, and sled dogs were called to prevent strays near the expanding base. Their new settlement, Qaanaaq, stood 108 kilometers to the north, hastily built and far from the best hunting. The houses were smaller and poorly insulated, local game was scarce, tuberculosis and hunger soon followed. Elders still recall that spring as the season when their world was erased. No compensation arrived for decades. Only in the 1990s did courts award damages, but the sense of loss lingers. Then the expansion of Thule Air Base, now called Pituffik Space Base, brought radar, runways, and the machinery of a new era, but it left behind a wound that shapes conversations about Greenlandic megaprojects to this day. The human cost of Cold War strategy remains visible in the faces and stories of those who remember being forced from their land. These memories are a reminder that strategic infrastructure carries consequences, and that geography can grant influence even as it changes people's lives. At the heart of Greenland's modern transformation stands Pituffik Space Base, now one of the most advanced outposts in the Arctic. On any given day, around 550 personnel, American, Danish, and civilian contractors, maintain the systems that keep the world's most powerful radar scanning the skies. The phased array sensors, housed inside massive white domes, sweep for ballistic missiles and track thousands of satellites in low Earth orbit. These are not relics of the Cold War, but living technology upgraded and expanded to meet the demands of a new era. The 12th Space Warning Squadron operates a two-sided solid-state radar capable of detecting intercontinental ballistic missiles the moment they arc over the pole. Data from Pituffik feeds directly into the North American Aerospace Defense Command, linking Greenland to a chain of early warning stations that stretches from Alaska to Britain. The base's satellite tracking station, known as POGO, makes more than 15,000 satellite contacts every year, supporting everything from military communications to weather forecasting. Recent investments have poured more than $1 billion into modernizing these systems. New contracts fund advanced radar arrays and hardened communication lines that can withstand Arctic storms and cyber threats alike. The base's strategic importance has only grown as space becomes a contested domain. Every launch, every satellite maneuver, every missile test is watched from the edge of the Greenland ice. And for the Space Force operators stationed here, global security depends on their ability to see further and react faster than anyone else. Greenland's geography, once a barrier, is now a vantage point. The world's great powers know it, and the technology here keeps them watching. Across southern Greenland, the land beneath the ice hides some of the world's most coveted minerals. The Kvanefjeld deposit, known locally as Quanersut, stands out for its size and potential. Independent surveys estimate over 11 million tons of total rare earth oxide, making it one of the largest undeveloped sources outside China. Neodymium, praseodymium, and terbium, elements essential for electric vehicles, wind turbines, and advanced military technology, concentrate here in higher proportions than most global rivals. Yet Kvanefjeld is not alone. The Tanbreeze project, owned by Critical Metals Corp, targets a carbonatite complex with rich concentrations of light rare earths and a cleaner profile, free from the uranium content that complicates other sites. In the west, the Amitsoq graphite project, operated by Green Rock Mining, holds a 30-year license granted in late 2025. It aims to produce 80,000 tons of battery-grade graphite annually, a scale that could matter for future battery supply chains. Battery grade remains the key technical standard here. Ownership and international interest reflect the stakes. Energy Transition Minerals, an Australian-listed firm, holds the majority of Kvanefjeld, with past Chinese offtake deals drawing scrutiny from both Danish and US authorities. Critical Metals, meanwhile, has attracted attention from the US Export-Import Bank, which signaled support with a loan offer of $120 million in 2025. That financing signal shows how geology, capital, and policy begin to link up. These projects are not just mining ventures, they are supply chain battlegrounds. Greenland's rare earths could reduce Western dependence on Chinese refining, but only if extraction and export hurdles can be overcome. Each license, each ton of ore, becomes a data point in the contest for global technological advantage. At the center of Greenland's rare earth ambitions lies a problem that cannot be solved by geology alone. For every ton of ore beneath the ice, there are years of negotiations above ground. The Kvanefjeld project is locked in a multi-billion-dollar arbitration, with Energy Transition Minerals seeking compensation after the 2021 uranium ban halted their plans. The dispute, now approaching $11.5 billion, has drawn in Danish and Greenlandic authorities, international lawyers, and investors watching for signs of regulatory clarity. Legal wrangling is only part of the bottleneck. Even if Greenland's mines could operate at full scale, that the next step, refining, remains almost entirely outside its borders. Refining is where ore becomes the magnets, batteries, and electronics that power modern technology. China controls up to 90% of global rare earth refining, and the West's attempts to build new capacity have been slow and costly. Pilot plants in the United States and Australia are years behind, with the next major Western facility, Iluka's Iniaba refinery, not expected online before 2026. For now, Greenland's ore would travel thousands of kilometers to reach a market-ready state, passing through a supply chain vulnerable to price swings, export controls, and shifting alliances. The supply chain is exposed at every link. Planners sketch out refineries and logistics corridors, but each new step faces permitting delays, environmental reviews, and questions over who will pay for the power and roads required. Permitting delays can stall projects for years and raise costs beyond initial estimates. Investors and regulators alike weigh the risks, litigation, construction overruns, and the possibility that policy could shift again. That combination makes financing large projects harder, and it can slow the industrial decisions that would keep value inside Greenland. And the gap between what is in the ground and what powers the world is wide, and every new regulation or arbitration adds another layer of uncertainty. On the tarmac outside Nuuk, a new 2,200-meter runway stretches across the Arctic gravel, finished in 2024 after years of planning and more than $700 million in investment. And the first direct flights from North America landed with little fanfare, but for airport officials and local businesses, the change was immediate. Suddenly, Greenland was no longer a multi-stop journey through Copenhagen. United Airlines filled every seat on its Newark to Nuuk route, and hotel bookings in the capital jumped by double digits within weeks. Airport authority leaders described the runway as a lifeline, not just for tourists, but for medical flights, business delegations, and urgent cargo. Before the expansion, heavy aircraft had to refuel in Iceland or wait for rare weather windows. Now, wide-body jets bring in everything from MRI machines to fresh produce, and emergency evacuations reach specialist hospitals in hours instead of days. This is only the beginning. Ilulissat and Qaqortoq are set to open their own extended runways by 2026, each over 1,500 meters long, connecting remote communities to the outside world year-round. These new links are already changing the rhythm of commerce and daily life. For investors and airlines, air access is the catalyst that turns Greenland from a distant outpost into a reachable destination. For the airport authorities managing these projects, every new flight is proof that geography, once a barrier, is now a gateway. Ships bound for Greenland's southern ports face more than just sea ice and fog. Even as air travel brings new visitors, the real test for economic growth happens on the water. At Qaqortoq, plans are underway for a deep water port, part of a 1.6 billion Danish kroner infrastructure package stretching from 2026 to 2029. The project aims to end the days when larger vessels waited offshore, transferring goods and tourists by small boat, often delayed by weather or blocked by drifting ice. Port operators recount a 2025 east-west voyage where a Maersk-led ice-class freighter managed a profitable transit, but only after days of waiting for clear passage and extra fuel runs. The journey, while celebrated in shipping circles, underscored how Arctic logistics remain unpredictable. Even at the height of summer, ice jams and sudden storms can close the route overnight, stranding cargo and crews. Energy planners face their own race against time. Mining projects and expanded ports need more power than local grids can provide. Nuuk has a 54 megawatt cap, and it is nearly 300 miles from most mineral sites, making new sources essential. In the second half of 2026, Greenland's government will open tenders for 2 major hydropower plants, hoping to attract bidders with promises of stable supply for both mining and community needs. The tender is only the first step. Construction, financing, and environmental reviews will take years. For port managers and energy officials, the catch-up is constant. Every new runway or quay exposes the gaps in the system. Infrastructure is coming, but for now, the rhythm of Greenland's transformation is set by the pace of ships and the flow of power. Every summer, as the Arctic ice recedes further, shipping analysts and logistics firms watch Greenland's coastlines with growing interest. The geometry of global trade is changing. For centuries, the shortest line between East Asia and Western Europe was blocked by ice, forcing vessels to detour thousands of kilometers south through the Suez Canal or the Panama Canal. Now, projections show that by the early 2030s, the summer opening of Arctic sea lanes could cut the journey by as much as 7,000 kilometers, nearly halving the distance between Shanghai and Rotterdam. That saving is not just a number on a map, it means weeks off delivery times, millions saved in fuel, and a fundamental reshaping of how goods move between continents. Shipping giants like Maersk and COSCO have already run trial voyages through the Northern Sea Route and the Northwest Passage, eyeing the possibility of regular transits as ice-free windows grow longer. For logistics planners, Greenland's ports and deep fjords offer the only practical refueling and emergency stops along vast stretches of the polar route. These ports are a strategic refueling node. The commercial lure is obvious. A container ship that once took more than a month to reach Europe from East Asia could complete the trip in less than 3 weeks, avoiding congested southern choke points and high canal fees. Analysts estimate that even a modest shift of global container traffic to Arctic routes would redirect billions in annual shipping revenue and force a rethink of port investments from Singapore to Hamburg. But the opportunity comes with operational risk. Arctic waters remain some of the most unpredictable on Earth. Even in peak summer, drifting ice, sudden storms, and uncharted shallows can turn a routine passage into a logistical challenge. Insurance rates for polar transits are among the highest in the industry, and only ice-class vessels can attempt the journey. In 2025, a Maersk-led convoy completed a profitable east-to-west crossing, but the voyage required careful coordination with ice pilots, satellite tracking, and backup fuel caches staged at Greenlandic ports. Delays from ice jams and weather added days to the schedule, reminding operators that savings on paper do not always translate to predictable profits on the water. For logistics firms, the calculus is evolving. The promise of a 7,000-kilometer shortcut is real, but so are the hazards. Greenland's emerging port infrastructure is now at the center of global route planning, not as a distant outpost, but as a critical node in the world's next major shipping corridor. In 2018, a $550 million bid to build and operate Greenland's new airports landed on the desks of Danish and Greenlandic officials. The offer came from China Communications Construction Company, a state-backed firm with a global track record. On paper, it promised faster construction, lower costs, and direct flights that could finally connect Nuuk and Ilulissat to the world. But behind closed doors, the reaction was swift and pointed. Emails circulated among Danish cabinet members that referenced a security red line. In Washington, defense officials flagged the bid as a direct challenge to Allied control of the Arctic's emerging AIR corridors. Within months, Denmark stepped in. The Danish government allocated its own funds to cover the airport project, sidelining the Chinese bid. U.S. officials, including then Secretary of Defense James Mattis, made clear in private meetings that strategic infrastructure in Greenland was not up for grabs. That decision set a precedent. Since then, every major infrastructure proposal in Greenland, whether for airports, ports, or mining corridors, faces a new kind of scrutiny. Security councils and finance ministries now review foreign bids not just for technical merit, but for their potential to alter the balance of power in the Arctic. Policy analysts describe this as a shift from open market competition to a tightly managed contest where allied governments use public finance to keep critical projects within trusted hands. The U.S. Export-Import Bank's 2025 loan offer of $120 million to the Tanbreez Rare Earth Project is just one example. Denmark's DKK 1.6 billion infrastructure package announced for the period from 2026 to 2029 is another, explicitly designed to fund ports, runways, and energy corridors with money that comes with security guarantees attached. Proposals from Chinese companies for satellite ground stations or naval logistics hubs have stalled or been quietly withdrawn after similar interventions. Internal strategy papers from 2024 and 2026, circulated among Western policy circles, warn that even seemingly commercial investments could provide adversaries with dual-use access, whether for data collection, resupply, or influence over future shipping lanes. The result is a landscape where infrastructure is not just about economic growth, but about who controls the arteries of global trade and defense. And for Greenland, these decisions mean that every new runway, port, or power plant is weighed not only for its economic promise, but for its potential to tip the balance between the world's largest powers. Finance has become a tool of strategy, and the flow of capital into Greenland now follows the currents of alliance and rivalry as much as the logic of the market. Greenland's infrastructure now shapes global security, rare earth supply, and Arctic trade. As new airports and deepwater ports come online, the world's superpowers draw ever closer, even as ice retreats. In this era, power rests where access begins. Greenland's remote geography isn't a barrier anymore. It is a launch pad. The next global shift may start on its frozen edge. What is your take on Greenland's rising influence?